You might have seen my video where I had my trolling motor speed controller hooked up to my trolling motor in a box, and it had a belt that went up to the handle, and I was controlled my potentiometer with that. Well, although that did work good, after a while the belt kind of gets worn and stretches and I have to replace it. So I've been in the market for a trolling motor, Minkata trolling motor that was this shape. I was looking for something that I thought this speed controller would fit into, and I came across this finally at a garage sale last week. Cost me 50 bucks. It's a 65 MX with maximizer, and I wasn't aware of that even back then. I believe this is like from the mid 90s, but back then they actually had a maximizer for these trolling motors. This one was for a 28 pound thrust, which is really of no use to me because I'm putting this on a 55. But anyway, I wanted it just for the head, just for the top part. And they built these pretty heavy duty back then. This is all aluminum. I stripped this all off. I'm not sure whether I want to anodize it or just paint it black again, but I think like a light blue or electric blue anodize would look really nice in that. But anyway, I had to cut out the old saddle mount that was for this handle. Even this handle is all aluminum. And I had to cut out the old saddle mount. It went in there like that and sat in the saddle, and it has a saddle cap. It bolted it down. Well, that would have been right in the way for my speed controller, which is going to sit in there like this. So I put it inside the cap instead. So now it's going to be like that. I made a little saddle, and the cap will go right on top of that. And that will be just above there. It won't touch this, so I have room. And there's a few other things I'm going to add to the top of this. I'll have my forward and reverse switch here, and my little power gauge, percentage gauge that came with this. And I'll paint this a different color as well. This top is plastic, but this is all aluminum. So I'll be able to use that and also be able to extend it in and out. I think this will work out a lot better. Just the way I did this was, there's a half hole in this handle that this slid into, this half shaft there, and I got a drill bit that was the same size as this and just drilled the hole around. And now I put the potentiometer in there, and I put a set screw in to hold it. And I'm going to have to put a stop on here, a stop for all the way off and a stop for full speed, so I can't break the potentiometer overturning it. But I'm going to get working on this, and I'll give you all a follow-up on it when I'm done. Hey, here's a short update just to show you how I'm progressing on this speed controller. I told you in the beginning of the video that I picked up an old Minkata trolling motor. I believe it's like probably mid-80s MX65 trolling motor. But I was looking for a specific trolling motor that had this type of shaped power head on it, so I'd be able to fit all the components that I'm going to put in here. So what I've done so far is I put a fan in here. I put the fan right here, and when I put the top on, that's going to blow directly on to the motor controller here. And I cut a hole here. This had a natural indentation in the bottom, so I cut a hole. That'll be for the exhaust. And also I bought two of these on Amazon, and these are identical to the one I was using, except this has a tethered power indicator, where the other one I was using, the indicator is right on the control board. So it's a 60 amp out continuous. You can tell because the 60 amp out continuous have the 8 MOSFETs there with the 8 heat sinks on them. The 40 continuous I think has 6, and the smaller you get, the less you have. But anyway, also I noticed that it doesn't indicate this in the description when I bought it. It's a soft start. This one isn't. These are identical as far as I can see. I looked at everything and they look identical except for the little power indicator. They're identical in the way they're made and every part that's on it. But when you start the motor up with this one, it starts slow and then it gets up to speed. But that's only when you start it out. When you turn it down and increase the speed, it does it pretty quick. It's just starting it up. It'll start slow and get up to speed. I mean, he gets up there pretty fast, but it's a soft start. And that's not indicated in the description when I bought it. Anyway, I thought it'd be kind of cool to have this. I mean, I really don't need it. I don't know really how accurate they are. I did try it for accuracy. I hooked up a small 12-volt motor that was 20 RPM, and I turned it on 100% and counted the RPMs at 12 volts, and it was like 21 RPM I got. So I turned it down to 50, started it again, and counted 11, 12 revolutions per minute at 50%. So it's kind of close, not spot on, but for 12 volts. So it's close, but if anything, it looks kind of cool. And on this, that's the way I'm going to have my potentiometer right onto the handle. The only problem I'm having here is when I turn it, this little button hits the contacts on either side. If I was to just pull it straight out when I extend the handle, I could get past it and it wouldn't be a problem. But if I have it all the way in, it wouldn't be a problem. But if I have it at a certain point, it's going to hit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind some of these contacts away on both sides. Fortunately, they're not high power running through that. This is for the fan on and off, and this is going to be for the reverse and forward, and neither one have high power. So I'm going to cut halfway through these contacts, leave half the contact on both sides, and I'll still be able to hook my wires up, and then when I turn this, it'll miss it. And another thing I wanted to mention, somebody put a comment on here. They said when they hooked their fan up, they were going to hook it up to the motor out. And I tried that, and you can do it. The only problem is with these fans, unless you have a different type of fan, they're brushless. So you can only hook them up one way. Red and black wire, positive, negative. If you hook them up in reverse, you damage them. Not all the time, but if you left it like that for any amount of time, it'll be damaged. So when you hook it up to your power out, it's going to work fine as long as it's got positive for the red. But as soon as you put it in reverse, it reverses the polarity, and now it's not going to work, and it'll probably burn it out. Another thing too, to the guy who says he wants to hook it up to his motor power out, when you turn that down, the fan's going to slow down. It's not going to run on high all the time. So if it gets warm and you turn it down, it's going to stay warm with that fan on low setting. The way I'm going to have this set up, it's going to be blowing at max speed all the time. max speed with whatever voltage it has. It'll start out with my batteries. It usually starts out with 13.4. I got AGM batteries. By the end of the day when I'm done, I'm down to 12.4. So that's going to be spinning at high speed all the time. I have a little circuit board I'm going to put in here that I'm going to connect the fan to. And that little circuit board regulates 12 volts all the time. I checked this, and this is the same as the first one I used. I checked the voltage out and the voltage in when this is in use, and it's not a constant 12 volt. It jumps all over the place. You'll see 18 volts, 8 volts, 13 volts, 17 volts. That's how I burnt the first two fans out. I wasn't aware that it was like that until I burnt the fans out, and then I checked out for the reason why, and it was because the voltage, I don't know if it's because it pulses when it sends the current through, but whatever it does, it changes the voltage dramatically, and it doesn't treat them fans well. So the fan's going to be on its own 12 volt power source. So I painted this and put a urethane coating on it, and I added this plastic housing. That's for the fan. There's the intake right there, and I was going to mount the power indicator right here, but that would have been right in the way of the handle, and there was just nowhere to put it on here where it wouldn't be in the way, so I decided to mount it here, and it looks pretty good here. And I ran the wires through right alongside the fan, and that'll plug right into the right where it's supposed to here when I get it all together. I put Spray Max 2K clear coat on here. That stuff is really hard. I was going to leave this the same color as it was when I got it. I was just going to, put my stuff in here and leave everything the same color. But by the time I got done getting the metal out of here, there was really no good way of cutting this big hunk of metal out with what I had. I tried it with a Dremel and a cut-off disc, and that didn't want to touch it. There was really nothing I had. Ultimately, a plasma cutter would have been ideal for cutting that out flush. So I used my acetylene torch, and I melted it out right down to as far as I could get it, and then I ground it down the rest of the way so I have a nice flat surface here to put this speed controller in. When I did that, it burned all the paint up on the outside, so I stripped it all down and repainted it. It doesn't look too bad. It was supposed to have been a metallic blue, and I was hoping it would be a lighter color than this. This is a dark blue, but looks pretty good anyway. So the only other thing I gotta have to do when I put this in here, this isn't plastic, it's aluminum, so I have to make sure this is insulated so it doesn't contact anywhere around. So I was gonna get some heat shrink and put a slit in it and put it all the way around when I stick it in there, and then I'm gonna just put some dabs of hot glue around the edges to keep it there, and if I have to replace it, all I have to do is just break that glue loose, so that shouldn't be a problem. So anyway, I have a bit of wiring up here to do, and I'll continue this video when I get it together, see how it works. Okay, here's another update on this thing, this pain in the ass. I've got my wiring just about completed. I had a couple of setbacks. I've been working on this thing for 2 days, wiring it. Took about 5 days for this paint, the urethane, to dry to the point where I could handle it without digging it up or getting fingerprints all over it. But anyway, this thing wouldn't have been such a pain, but I I screwed up a couple of times myself on this. Yesterday, when I was putting these two LED, this is for the LED light for my fan. This is a switch for my fan here. When I was connecting it, before I got a chance to put insulation on it, I pushed one into the other and arced it out. Here's a little circuit board that I pulled out of a jump box. This regulates the power so I get a straight 12 volt power coming from the battery. If I was to hook my fan up directly to the incoming or outgoing wires, it would burn the fan because of the voltage spikes that it gets. I believe it's because this is a PWM and it throws out pulses, so you're not getting a true 12 volt reading out. It just shoots it all over the place, anywhere between 1 volt, and I've seen it jump up to 67 volts. I don't know how. It doesn't affect the way it runs the trolling motor, but anything that you're going to hook up to it, it just can't handle that voltage spike up and down. So anyway, I noticed when I used my jump box cigarette lighter to power the fan on the old trolling motor speed controller that I had, that the cigarette plug put out a constant 12 volt, and when I inspected it to see why, I realized that that cigarette plug is wired up to this little circuit board here. In other words, I had my 12 volt battery in parallel with all the other batteries I was using to run my trolling motor, but the cigarette plug on that jump box was the only source that gave me a true 12 volts. So I pulled out this little circuit board and I found a way to wire it up. Now this is just for the ground. I got everything running that has a ground on it to this circuit board. That's for my fan, forward and reverse for the trolling motor. Everything runs to this, and the only reason why I did it is because these switches have LED lights in them, so I had to have a true 12 volt power source, otherwise I would have burnt the LED lights out as well as the fan. So this is the little circuit board I found. I put that in there, just hot glued it in there. Anyway, yesterday when I arced these two out, I burned out one of the little diodes or whatever you want to call it on here. So I had to probe around and find another 12 volt source, and I did. So today I got it all wired up again, and I have these two hot wires going to this. This is an auxiliary port that I can run my trolling motor steering off of. So I didn't have to run a separate wire for my trolling motor steering. I could just use a little coil cord that goes from here, which is this here, and I run that right to my trolling motor, so that has a true 12 volt source. Well, today, when I went to check the power out with my meter, I accidentally touched the hot wire pin here to the side, and this whole body's aluminum, so it arced that out, and I blew out another little diode on that circuit board. So I had to find another source, and I probed around. Luckily, this has got a lot of little diodes in it, and some that you check is just like having it straight from the battery, where you get that weird reading, but then you can find a couple on there that have a true 12 volt source, or whatever your battery's charged to. And so I found another one. I got it wired up. This time I'm not going to arc anything out and to get this thing together. I got it working, but Yeah, it was a pain in the neck wiring this thing up. Not only that, but I had to make the motor controller fit. I had to trim the edges away from the circuit board just so I could get it to sit in there low enough where the steering rod wasn't going to hit the top of it. So everything's a real tight fit in there, but it's going to work. And I'm just about ready. I just got to solder one more wire. Just got to solder this wire to here. You know, put some hot glue on it or something to insulate it, but that'll be it. Then I can stick the top back on. I got to carefully route these wires around so nothing gets hung up when I put the top back on. So I'm just about done here. This is taking me a while, and I want to get this out on the lake tomorrow, so hopefully I'll get it finished up today. We'll see how it goes, and I'll update you when I get it together. Okay, well, I finally got this finished up today. Yay! Here's what it looks like all back together. I even picked up a couple of decals. It says model 55D, and this is not a 55D, but it is a 55-pound thrust now. I put it on my Endura 55, which is that right there. And here's my buttons I put on here, LED backlit buttons. This is forward and reverse. This stays lit all the time. That's the way I have it wired. That's the only way I can wire that. Here's fan power, just so I can turn the fan off so it isn't running all the time. That's on. LED lights up when it's on. And here's the intake back here. I don't know if you can hear it running, but... And then it exhausts right here in the bottom. And it puts it out pretty good, so that should do a good job cooling this off, because those speed controllers do get rather warm. My handle extends in and out, nice and smooth. That's forward. And what I did notice about these new speed controllers, I think I mentioned this before, these actually have a soft start. If I turn that all the way on, it takes it a minute to get up to speed, where the last speed controller, which is this one, didn't have that feature. And if you look at these side by side, all the components on each one, they're identical. So how they built that soft start feature into it, I don't know. The only difference is this one comes with a tethered power indicator, and this one's built right into the panel. And actually, I just found this on Amazon, and it's the first time I've ever seen one made like this. I have seen them like this, but only on the 40 continuous current ones, not the 60 continuous, and this is a 60 continuous. So I took advantage of that, and I made this housing for the air intake for the fan. I also used it to mount my power indicator. I don't know if you can see that LED on here, but it looks pretty cool there. And also, along with the soft start, this also has a brake on it. As you can see, when I turn this off, it stops right away. It doesn't continue to spin like the other one did. The other one would continue to spin a little bit before it stopped. As soon as this power's off, it stops. And it doesn't say anything about it in the description, but whatever. I don't care much for it if it has it or not, but as long as it works. And I don't see why it won't. This one has been real reliable. It still works. That's the one I used in my last housing that I had. So yeah, and I put a plug in here for an auxiliary 12 volt to power my remote steering. That way I don't have to have an extra wire to plug into my remote steering unit. One less wire I have to have. So that's it. Came out pretty good. I'm going to take it to the lake tomorrow and give it a shot. See how it does. I may continue this video when I get up there just to let you know how I do, but if I don't, I'll talk to you soon.